Nations is seen in the Declaration of Independence and other important documents in American society.
In 1787, Washington, in his farewell address, offered perhaps the most convincing call for the importance of religion not only to America's moral fiber, but also its civic survival. "'Tis substantially true that virtue or morality is a necessary spring of popular government," he said. "Let us with caution indulge the supposition that morality can be maintained without religion."
Washington is saying that religion is necessary to form the character of the people. So religion, in creating good Christians, created good citizens and was therefore necessary for political prosperity.
For most Americans, though, one phrase comes to mind when they think of the founders' views on religion: the wall of separation between church and state. But as we've seen, this language is not in the First Amendment, or for that matter, any of the founding documents of the United States. So where is it? Those words actually come from the third president, Thomas Jefferson. Though known as the most skeptical of the founders, Jefferson actually attended Sunday church services in the House of Representatives while he was president. On New Year's Day, 1802, he sat down to write a letter to a group of Baptist supporters in Connecticut, reaffirming his commitment to religious liberty.
In his letter to the Baptists, he quotes from the First Amendment and then ends with a comma and says, thus building a wall of separation between church and state. This was a letter written on January 1, 1802.
An elegant metaphor, but ignored for much of America's history. It would be almost 150 years before those words would become fighting words. When we come back, the wall of separation really gets built in modern America. Everson was a product of a changing religious landscape in America.
From what we might call the colonial period, getting up through the Civil War, the United States was, without a doubt, an overwhelmingly Protestant nation. Beginning in the late 19th century, we start to see immigration on a more massive scale coming from Western and Eastern Europe. So a combination of things produced kind of a backlash among some elements of Protestant America.
Especially against Catholics.
There's a concern that perhaps the Catholic community is getting too strong. Remember, the name of the organization that we go by today, Americans United for Separation of Church and State, what was it founded as? Protestants and Other Americans United for Separation of Church and State. It was an expressly anti-Catholic organization.
The main division in the country was what you would call mainline Protestant groups and the Catholic hierarchy pushing very strongly for subsidies for its educational community. And that's helped spark the creation of our organization.
Americans United soon became part of a growing movement championing a
using a historical approach and the language used by the Supreme Court of the United States.
As we've seen, that language was written by Justice Hugo Black. Black was no legal scholar, but a former U.S. Senator from Alabama with a controversial past.
Hugo Black was a former member of the Ku Klux Klan. The group he hated most was not blacks or Jews, it was Roman Catholics.
There have been those who've alleged that it was blacks' disapproval, perhaps even disdain for Roman Catholicism in American society, that was very much a motivating factor when blacks spoke of the necessity for a high and impregnable wall of separation.
Whatever his motivations, Black's language, in the Everson opinion, was sweeping. For the first time, he said the First Amendment's Establishment Clause applied not just to the federal government, but also to the states. And he offered up a new concept of its intent, to erect a Jeffersonian wall of separation between church and state. That wall must be kept high and impregnable, he wrote. We could not approve the slightest breach.
For Hugo Black, there were not a lot of gray areas. Black was not a on the one hand, on the other hand guy. And if the Establishment Clause says that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, no meant no.
Black was even more specific. No setting up a church, no coercion in matters of religion, no laws to aid religion, and no taxes to support religion. But some scholars say Black got his history wrong. It has been central to the battles of the past 60 years over the role of religion in public life. But now the court may be on the verge of a major change, a change that could last for decades more.
You're going to see religious cases go the other way. No more of this. It's got to be surrounded by secular symbols. It will now be a clear yes or no. You're going to see the view that there's nothing in the Constitution prohibiting government from recognizing that most of its citizens celebrate and recognize Christmas.
Let me tell you something. At the end of the day, when you've got a religion case at the Supreme Court of the United States, there's people ask me, what's the rule? The rule is count to 5. You got to have 5 votes.
When Supreme Court Justice Sandra Day O'Connor announced her retirement and Chief Justice William Rehnquist died last summer, suddenly there were 2 vacancies on the court and a chance for President Bush to make history.
I want to reiterate that
Jay Sekulow was tapped to consult on the nominations.
the president's very specific. He knows what issues we're gearing the American people up. And it was the Pledge of Allegiance and being able to have a nativity scene in the courthouse square without a constitutional crisis.
American people have learned about the career and character of Judge Roberts. They like what they see.
The first step was the appointment of John Roberts, 50, a brilliant legal mind who would clerk for Chief Justice Rehnquist, who was confirmed in September to fill his mentor's seat. Soft-spoken and devoutly Roman Catholic, Roberts is not seen as someone who would continue marginalizing religion, but that only restored a 4-to-4 balance on the court.
I'm confident that Harriet Miers will add to the wisdom and character of our judiciary when she is confirmed as the 110th Justice of the Supreme Court.
Bush next picked his personal lawyer, Harriet Miers, to fill the last court seat. She was a born-again Christian, but that was not enough to reassure conservatives who wanted the next nominee to have a proven judicial philosophy. Miers withdrew.
Judge, thanks for agreeing to serve.
And the president named Samuel Alito, an appeals court judge from New Jersey with a 15-year track record.
My knowledge of Judge Alito goes back to when Sam and I were college classmates together at Princeton.
Andrew Napolitano is Fox News senior judicial analyst and a former judge on the Superior Court of New Jersey.
I know his thinking very well, and he has traditionally sided with the right of the individual to express a religious opinion on public property.
I mean, look, he's handled every case from the nativity scene display to the student wanting to pray at a graduation ceremony. This is someone that's known in the community, has a known judicial philosophy, and 300 published opinions.
Our concerns about Judge Alito are that he will adopt such a narrow definition of separation of church and state that really, as long as the government doesn't officially establish a national church, it can pretty much do anything else it wants. And I think that that type of a narrow definition of separation of church and state runs contrary to what the founders wanted, their vision for this nation, and we're going to oppose that very strongly.
Like Chief Justice Roberts, Alito is also a Roman Catholic, and when he was confirmed, he became the 5th Catholic, now sitting on the court. That is a major irony given the anti-Catholic fears that may have motivated Justice Black 60 years ago. In the months since Roberts and Alito joined the court, they have yet to rule on a major constitutional freedom of religion case. Eventually they will, and when they do, the debate on religion's role in public life will likely begin anew. What is at stake, after all, is a view of religion in America